in terms of the approaches to estimation, we talked about different ones. So for example, we mentioned top-down estimation, bottom-up estimation. Top-down is where you actually have a rough idea in terms of comparing that to something else. And that's why you actually have the initial one I was talking about, the painting of the house. The first house on the left was a simpler one. You have a rough idea in terms of the size of that. So you say, oh yeah, roughly it would take 10,000 pounds for, I'm just giving an example, for 2 coats of paints with this, blah, blah, blah. Whereas on the house on the right that you had seen is very complex. So I'm just going to go back to that, sorry. So it's fairly complicated, right? So you don't have an idea. You need to actually get down to that. You need to actually take measurements, the dimensions, how many rooms are there? What are the dimensions of each room, right? And then for that, we should actually kind of look at, does one wall have a wallpaper, or is it 4 walls of the house the same paint? So all of these detailing would come in. They'll take the measure up stuff, everything, and then they'll be able to come up with a proper estimate. Again, that's an estimate, but then that's actually working to, in terms of bottom up, going to each and everything. So in a sprint, in an agile estimation, that's actually bottom up. The developers would take each task and then understand what is involved and then come up with the story points. So this is a bottom up estimation, whereas in the previous days of functional decomposition, we used to do the top down estimate. And then absolute estimate is for that house, the house on the right. That's the estimate that you come up with based on all the measures, the dimensions, looking at each and every room and getting a feel of it, noting down the dimensions, and then coming up with the number of coats required, the amount of paint required, and then perhaps the number of brushes or the rollers required, the number of painters required, the skill sets, all of these, actually, you're talking about that particular house. It's an absolute estimation. You're not talking about something else. Whereas the relative estimation is the one on the left, you're using just some rough guesstimate as what we call. Say that, okay, I've done a similar one in the house about 2 years ago in a different place, but it's a similar one. So I'm just thinking, roughly comparing the size. Yeah, it's a tad bit smaller, but I think I'll just go with a slightly higher figure just to be on the safe side, is what some of the professionals would think, right? So they'll give, anyway, I'll go with, it should actually roughly cost not more than 7,000 pounds. But he'll say, you know what, just keep 10K, just so that you're covered on all bases, and applying inflation and all those other things into the whole thing. So relative estimation is what we actually tend to do. The t-shirt estimation, planning poker, this is all relative